and welcome to another week of Footsteps. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rachel.
And Sprocket's still under the table. This week we're going to be looking at Joseph the minister. In Canaan, his father and brothers were already short of grain to make bread. At last Jacob decided to send his sons, and all of them except Benjamin, to Egypt. As Jacob's 10 sons stood before the governor, asking if they might buy grain, none of them recognised their long-lost brother, but Joseph knew at once who they were. He decided to see if they were still as cruel as they had been. So he looked at them sternly. "You are spies," he said, and flung them into prison. He set them free after 3 days. But he made them promise to bring Benjamin with them next time, and he kept Simeon as a hostage to make sure that they did. Then he ordered his servants to put the money his brothers had paid back for the grain back in their sacks. When the brothers opened their sacks and found the money, they were very worried. Sadly, they travelled back to Canaan with the grain.
In Canaan, Joseph's father and his brothers were already short of grain. At last, Jacob decided to send his sons, all of them except Benjamin, to Egypt. As Jacob's 10 sons stood before the governor, asking if they might buy grain, none of them recognised their long-lost brother. But Joseph knew at once who they were. He decided to see if they were as cruel as they had been. So he looked at them sternly. "You are spies," he said, and flung them into prison. He set them free after 3 days. But he made them promise to bring Benjamin with them next time. And he kept Simeon as hostage, to make sure that they did. Then he ordered his servants to put the money his brothers had paid for the grain back in their sacks. When the brothers opened their sacks and found the money, they were very worried. Sadly, they travelled back to Canaan with the grain. Next time they must take Benjamin. But how could they persuade Jacob to part with his youngest son? When the food was finished, they had no choice. Benjamin had to go with them, or they would starve. Again they stood before the governor of Egypt, and when Joseph saw Benjamin, he could hardly hold back his tears. The brothers knelt before Joseph. "How is the old man, your father?" he said. "And is this your youngest brother?" Then Joseph's servants prepared a meal for the brothers to sit down and eat. When the food was brought, Benjamin was given 5 times as much as the others. But still Joseph didn't tell them who he was. Next morning, when the sacks were filled with grain, Joseph told his servants to hide his own silver cup in Benjamin's sack. The brothers had not gone far when Joseph's men caught up with them. They were looking for the thief who'd stolen Joseph's cup. When Benjamin's sack was opened, there, to the brothers' horror, lay the missing cup. They all returned to the city and fell at Joseph's feet. "The man whose sack the cup had found in shall be my slave," said Joseph, testing them. "The rest of you are free to go." But the brothers would not hear of it. They could not bear to tell their father that this son too had been taken from him. Judah spoke. "If Benjamin does not return with us, our father will die of grief. I promised to bring the boy back safely. Let me be your slave in his place." When Joseph heard this, he knew his brothers were truly sorry for what they had done to him. He sent his servant out of the room and then burst into tears. "I am Joseph," he said. "Is my father still alive?" There was dismay on all their faces. Now Joseph could really pay them back. What would he do to them? But Joseph was speaking again. "Don't be afraid. It was God who sent me here in order to save all our lives. The harvest will be bad for 5 more years, and many will starve to death. Go home and bring the rest of the family here to live near me in the land of Goshen." And he hugged them all. The tears ran down his face. So Jacob and Joseph's brother, their wives and children, their servants and cattle and flocks, left Canaan and came to Egypt. Joseph took Jacob to the palace to meet the king, and then they all settled in Goshen, the best part of the land.
To show that Joseph forgave his brothers, we are making a hug. So he's cut out 2 hands, a circle and a square to put them together.
In the middle, I'm going to write forgiveness helps everyone. But you don't need to write that. You could write something that you think. I like this because it gives me a hug. That's a face, so you could draw a face on it. You could colour it. And then every time you're feeling a little bit angry, think of the hug.
Bye.
Bye.